The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters. He should have immediately denounced the mob when he saw what was unfolding. These facts require immediate action by President Trump. Accept his share of responsibility, quell the brewing unrest, and ensure President-elect Biden is able to successfully begin his term. From the beginning, the Select Committee refused to investigate the real circumstances that led to the riot, including the lack of security around the Capitol. They also ignored the left-wing mob violence, which led to riots and loss of life across the country.
That was House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy just a week after the attack on the Capitol, compared to his comments today. Shortly after the riot, a number of GOP leaders condemned the violence, putting the blame on President Trump. The further away we got from that day, polls show public outrage has similarly waned. CBS News chief political analyst and senior national correspondent John Dickerson joins us now for more. Hey, John, thanks for being here. I was so struck by your essay on Sunday morning this past weekend about the importance and significance of these hearings. So why are these hearings so important?
It's good to be with you, Caitlin. They're important because they're a test not just of the past, but of the present. You know, whether lawmakers can handle this most serious issue of the health of our democracy, which is really what these hearings are about, whether they can handle it seriously, or whether those who don't like these hearings because they're politically inconvenient employ all of the techniques of diversion and dissembling that actually led to the riot on January 6th itself. And the reason I say this is about the health of the democracy is, what does a democracy do at its basic core? What it does is it adjudicates competing claims peacefully. And if you can't do that in an election, you can't do that every day when a government is called to resolve those competing claims peacefully on issues like immigration and inflation. So this is a look at whether our democracy is still healthy enough to function in the way it should.
And there is the audience for tonight. I mean, this is a prime time appearance of these hearings. What should viewers keep in mind while they're watching this?
Well, there will be a lot of analysis of what happened on that day, on January 6th. And that's, of course, quite important. But I think what they should be keeping in mind is what allowed that to happen on that day. What weaknesses in American democracy existed to allow everything that happened basically after the election was over in 2020. And what of those weaknesses exist still today? Because if those weaknesses are still a part of the infrastructure of American democracy, they will have bad consequences again.
And you've written a lot about the presidency, including in a recent book. How do you think about these hearings in that context? I mean, it's interesting to me that this is a former president who really didn't face political consequences yet for this, and neither have members of his party so far. It's become kind of a pervasive view within the Republican Party. Can you contextualize that a little bit for us?
Former President Trump faced a flicker of consequences, and you played Kevin McCarthy's comments right after January 6th. And it's striking, in that hot period where everyone was still recoiling from the riot, you had the three most powerful Republicans who were not the president speak up. And you had the leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, then the leader in the House, Kevin McCarthy, and they blamed not only President Trump for inciting, so what happened before the riot, then also for not doing anything after it. And then Kevin McCarthy, in the remarks that were just played, was talking about how the president had an obligation of his office to smooth the way for the next president, as all the previous presidents had done for their successors. He did none of those three things. Then more recently, the vice president, Mike Pence, came out and said the president had asked him to do something that was the most un-American thing you could ask a person to do, which was for a single person to make the decision for an entire democracy. So you have the top three Republicans saying that the president broke with his office repeatedly. That should be disqualifying, and yet former President Trump is the assumed next nominee of the Republican Party and is certainly the leader of that party. So it's a striking contrast to what has been said about the president and the fact that he is the person that at the moment Republicans say they want to go back into the job.
And John, a lot of those Republicans are saying that tonight doesn't really matter, that voters care more about inflation and the economy and things happening right now, kind of trying to put this behind them in a way. What do you make of that argument?
Well, as you say, it's a political argument. They're trying to put it behind them. Inflation is a good thing for them to talk about. The fact that the leader of their party broke with the oath of his office repeatedly is not a good thing for them to talk about. But as a serious governing matter, there is no management book, no CEO who would say, when faced with multiple challenges, you can only handle one at a time. It's easy, it's possible for governments to both handle inflation and other pressing matters in the moment and other things that are important. And clearly the healthy functioning of a democracy is important to a democracy. So the notion that a government can only handle one issue at a time isn't really consistent with the best functioning of that government.
Indeed. Well, John Dickerson, thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you on Face the Nation this Sunday.
Thanks, Caitlin.